I'm ashamed to call you my mother. The words didn't shake the walls, but they shattered something deeper, something human. Benjamin stood still in the center of his luxurious living room, the city of Legos glittering behind him through glass walls. His voice had been low, steady, not a shout, but a sentence, a verdict. His hand slipped from Adana's fingers. She said nothing. She didn't need to. She stood beside him like a monument, silent, elegant, immovable. The housekeepers at the entrance dared not breathe. Across the room, in the wheelchair she had borrowed from the village chairman, Madame Sarah sat, facing her only son. Her silver hair, tied in a simple scarf, seemed to shimmer under the chandelier light. Her fingers trembled slightly on the armrest, but her face held no anger, only grief. Benja, she began softly, her voice worn thin by years and weather and war. He stepped forward, eyes hard. Why are you here? His words weren't a question. They were a door slammed shut. I called you for weeks, she said. You didn't pick up. I thought. You thought wrong. He cut in. You always think wrong. I gave you money last month. What more do you want? The air was thick. No one moved. You gave the driver money, she said gently. Not me. And I didn't come for money. Adana stepped forward now, her voice cool and clipped like glass. Mama, with respect, this is not the village. Benjamin is busy. There's order here. If you need something, you can talk to me. I manage his time. Madame Sarah blinked slowly, confused for a moment. You manage my son? She asked. Adana nodded. I'm his wife. I protect him. Protect him from who? Sarah's voice cracked. His own mother? Benjamin raised his voice, sharp now. Enough. Stop making a scene. She laughed. A soft, bitter sound. A scene? My love for you is now a scene? She shook her head, staring at the floor as if trying to remember where it all went wrong. Benjamin, do you remember our old house? She asked. The night we had no kerosene, and I boiled Gary like soup so you would think it was jollof rice and sleep with a happy dream? Do you remember the day I sold my wedding ring to buy your math textbook because you cried when you failed? Her voice grew smaller. I am not here to take. I came to see if you're still you. Adana sighed, checked her watch. Benjamin, we have a meeting in an hour. And then came the moment. The crack that split the ground beneath them. Why can't you leave me alone? Benjamin said. I'm ashamed to call you my mother. Stop embarrassing me. The housekeeper in the kitchen dropped the spoon. It clanged against tile like a bell in a funeral service. Madame Sarah didn't cry right away. Her shoulders fell slowly, like an old tree giving way to wind. She took a long breath, reached for her bag, and placed it gently on her lap. If you choose to forget, she whispered, God does not. If I have wronged you, let God judge me. If I have not, let God judge you. She turned her wheelchair toward the door. Her hands were steady, but her heart was not. The long marble steps that led to the driveway waited like a cliff. No one moved to help her. At the top of the stairs, she paused. God, keep my boy, she whispered. Then she rolled forward. The front wheel caught on the edge. Her hand slipped. The chair tipped. Benjamin shouted, Ma, but his legs didn't move in time. The wheelchair buckled, twisted, and then flipped. Her body followed. Her scarf flew off like a flag, surrendering to the wind. Her frail arms flailed in the air as gravity took her. The scream tore through the mansion like a siren. The metallic clatter of the wheelchair echoed. And then, silence. A thud. Then a red stain bloomed across the white interlocked tiles. Benjamin was the first to move. He ran, dropping to his knees beside her. Her eyes were open, but they didn't see him. Blood trickled from her temple, sliding down her cheek like a tear that had waited too long. Mama, please, he begged. Stay with me. The housekeeper screamed. The driver was already running toward the car. Adana stood frozen. One hand covered her mouth, but her eyes remained unreadable. She's dying, Benjamin said. We need to get her to the hospital, Adana replied, still cold. Don't panic. Don't panic, he snapped. She's bleeding. He lifted Madame Sarah gently. Her head lolled against his shoulder. The silver scarf lay behind them on the stairs, forgotten. As they sped through Lagos traffic, Benjamin whispered the same prayer over and over. God, please don't take her. Please. In the back seat, her lips moved faintly. Benja. He leaned closer. Mama, I'm here. I gave everything, she whispered. Save your strength, please. But her eyes closed again. At the hospital, Doctors rushed her into emergency. Benjamin tried to follow, but a nurse stopped him. "Sir, please wait outside." He stood there, covered in her blood, trembling. Adana sat nearby, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. "Do you even care?" he asked. She looked up. "Benjamin, don't start." Maybe this was God's way of ending the drama. He stared at her. "That's my mother. And I'm your wife," she snapped. "You need to focus on us, not her constant complaints." He turned away. For the first time in years, he prayed with tears in his eyes. 2 hours later, the doctor returned. "I'm sorry," he said. "She didn't make it. The impact to her head was too severe." Benjamin collapsed to the floor. The cry that left him didn't sound like a man. It sounded like a boy. Adana stepped forward, placed a hand on his shoulder. "At least the old woman is gone," she said. "With her troubles." He stood, slowly. Then he slapped her. The sound echoed like thunder. "You heartless woman," he said through clenched teeth. "You turned me against her. And I let you." Adana didn't respond. She folded her arms and looked away. 3 days later, they buried Madame Sarah in the village she never stopped calling home. Women wailed. Men shook their heads. The pastor spoke of sacrifice and love. But Benjamin's cries rose above them all. "I failed you," he sobbed by her coffin. "I chose pride over love. I let you die without peace. Mama, please forgive me." Family held him back when the coffin lowered. He nearly jumped in. Even Adana's parents looked ashamed. Their daughter stood dry-eyed, unmoved. That night, Benjamin lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The silence in the room screamed louder than grief. Adana turned her back to him. His mother's words returned like a ghost. "May the joy of parenthood hide from you, unless I have wronged you." He closed his eyes. But sleep didn't come. Only the curse did. In the days after the funeral, silence became Benjamin's constant companion. It followed him through the empty halls of the mansion, through rooms that once held laughter, warmth, and tension. Now they echoed with absence. He avoided mirrors. He avoided people. He avoided memory. He leaned into work, sending orders via phone calls, conferences, contracts. But no email, no deal, no midnight meeting could touch the one business he could not solve, the one at the bottom of his soul. He barely spoke to Adana. Their divorce had been final years ago, but living under the same roof after his mother's death felt like cohabiting with a ghost. She moved through the house quietly, her heels clicking faintly at night, always at a distance. She left early in the mornings. She returned late. She never asked how he slept. He never asked how she felt. A wall rose between them, brick by invisible brick. Once, in the kitchen, he saw her staring at the widow's rocking chair in the corner. It had not been moved. A stiff sheet covered it. The sight hit him like a cord of memory, a ghost of her mother-in-law sitting in that chair, her fingers drumming on her lap. Adana dropped her gaze and left without a word. He found himself wandering that corner too, touching the dusty wood, imagining her ghost rising, smiling tenderly, forgiving him. But the image always dissolved, replaced by guilt. He would shove his hands into his pockets and walk away. Weeks passed, then months. The curse his mother spoke, "You will never know the joy of parenthood unless I have wronged you," echoed in every unanswered prayer, every sterile test result. Infertility doctors, fertility clinics, spiritual healers, they all shook their heads, saying nothing was wrong. As though the void was internal, a wound not visible, a scar in his spirit. He watched new fathers in the streets, pushing strollers, teaching their children to walk, laughing with their toddlers. His eyes followed. His chest ached. Every day he drove past creches and playgrounds and felt what he had lost. Not just a child, but permission to be a father. In the mansion's study one evening, his gaze turned to the framed photograph of Madame Sarah, her silver hair, her soft, determined smile, the eyes that had once believed in him. He whispered, "How do I live without your blessing, Mama?" The silence answered him. That night, he dreamed. In the dream, he was back in the village house, the mud walls, the empty compound, the tin roof singing in the rain. His mother knelt before him, her scarf tied loosely. Tears glistened on her cheeks, though she didn't cry. She whispered, "Open your heart. Let me in." He tried to run to her, hugged her, but he woke. His shirt was damp with sweat. The room was cold. The walls stood empty. He curled inward, haunted. Then Juliet arrived. It began quietly. He received a message, A young woman wishes to meet you regarding your mother's memory. He thought it was another beggar, another scam. He vetted the request, convinced guards and assistants to screen it. But something, intuition or desperation, told him to allow it. She came at dusk the day he least expected it. The guards led her through the gate. She stood at the threshold of his living room. Her blue dress was simple, her sandals worn, her braids long. But her eyes were fire. They held stories, sorrow, hope. "Sir," she said, kneeling before him, "my name is Juliet. I come because of your mother." Benjamin froze. She told him, trembling, that years ago, when she was a sick child in a distant village, Madame Sarah had sold her last piece of land to pay for her treatment. That act saved her life. She begged him not for gratitude, but for reconciliation. "She told me," Juliet said, her voice steady despite tears, "that I would deliver a message. She visits me in dreams. She says forgiveness is near, if only you open your heart. That she is not lost, and neither are you." Benjamin's chest constricted. He felt her words like a river breaking through dams of stone. For years he had built walls to keep pain out. Now a stranger poured sunlight through the cracks. He said nothing. He sat. She rose and asked to stay. Not as a guest, but as someone who would serve. Someone who asked permission to walk beside him, quietly. And something in him cracked. He let her stay. He gave her a small corner of the mansion, forbade luxury. But no one forced her away when she quietly began helping the staff, cleaning, cooking. More than that, she brought a softness into the halls. The silence lightened whenever she sang hymns as she worked, or prayed in a low voice in the evenings when the wind whipped through the glass windows. Benjamin resisted the stirrings. He told himself she was only a distraction, a curious footnote. Pride warned him, "You don't deserve redemption." The curse whispered, "You are unclean." Guilt tortured him. But he watched her in moonlight sometimes, delicately brushing a plant's leaves in the garden, her eyes dreamy with compassion. He watched how she listened when he told parts of his story, how she nodded, wiping tears quietly, never judging, always present. One night, Juliet knocked on his study door. She held a worn Bible, open to Isaiah. "Sir, may I read?" she asked softly. He glanced up, then nodded. She read, voice trembling then firm. "Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow." Her lips moved with each word, but her eyes remained locked on his. "Your mother told me in my dream last night. She said she forgives you, but you must forgive yourself." The meaning pressed into him. Redemption is not a gift. It is what the wounded must take. He could no longer stay locked behind his regret. He stood, tears in his eyes. "How do you know this?" She closed the Bible gently. "Because I was saved by the same hands that raised you. And I believe in second chances." His body shook. He wept, not the muted, composed tears of a powerful man hidden behind a mask, but sobs drawn from the heart of a son who lost his mother too soon. That night, he didn't sleep. But for the first time in years, he felt something. Hope. Yet darkness waited. For as Juliet settled into the household, rumors began to weave through the staff. Quiet whispers about her past, speculations, jealousies. And on certain nights, when the winds howled, Benjamin heard sounds on the veranda, shadows slipping past windows, lights flickering, doors creaking when no one walked by. He tried to console himself. His demons were not hers. But inside him, he worried. Adana's pride would see Juliet's arrival as insult or threat. He didn't know how high the storm would rise. But as he lay awake in the dark, haunted by guilt and regret, one faint hope glowed in his chest. Maybe this child could break the chains his mother spoke of. Maybe forgiveness could find him through another's faith. He whispered into the darkness, "Mama, if you can see me now, guide me. Let me be worthy." And somewhere, in the wind beyond the glass walls, a scarf fluttered. It began with a knock. Not just any knock. A slow, deliberate thud that rang through the mansion like a challenge. Benjamin sat in his study, fingers resting idly on the keys of his laptop. The rain outside tapped softly on the glass windows, a muted rhythm. Lagos was winding down for the evening, but something in the air warned him that peace was temporary. The intercom crackled. "Sir," came the hesitant voice of the gate guard. It's Madame Adana." Benjamin didn't answer at first. He blinked. Once. Twice. The name hadn't passed through his house in years. Not since she walked out. No. vanished, leaving behind divorce papers and the scent of expensive perfume in the curtains. She had cut herself from his life with surgical precision. Now she was back, at his gate. He exhaled, slow and controlled. Tell her to leave. She says she won't, sir. The guard replied nervously. She's standing in the rain. Benjamin stood from his chair, walked to the window. A black SUV sat parked just beyond the estate gate. The silhouette of a woman stood by the entrance, shoulders straight, umbrella closed, face turned toward the house like a curse waiting for acknowledgement. Let her in, he said at last. But only her. Moments later, the door swung open. Adana entered like someone who had never left. She looked older, leaner, sharper, but still poised. Dressed in black from head to toe, her eyes shielded by sunglasses even as rain dripped from her coat. Her heels echoed across the marble floor like judgment. Benjamin didn't move. He simply watched. So, she said, removing her glasses slowly. Her eyes were dry, but gleaming with fire. It's true. You replaced me. You walked out, Benjamin replied, his voice even. I walked out of a dead thing. Don't twist it. He looked past her, toward the stairs. Juliet appeared silently at the top, one hand resting on the curve of her belly. She wore a plain gown. No jewelry, no makeup, just simplicity and quiet strength. Adana's gaze locked on her. That's her, she asked. The girl? Juliet said nothing. Adana smiled without warmth. The child must be yours, then. She took a few steps forward. Isn't it ironic? I gave you 10 years. 10 years of marriage, of shame, of waiting, empty. And this one strolls in from the mud and gives you what I couldn't. Benjamin stepped in between them. That's enough. No, Adana said, eyes narrowing. I haven't even started. You gave me a curse. Your mother cursed our womb. And now you reward this little villager? Juliet flinched, not from the insult, but from something deeper. A coldness that crept into the room like smoke. Benjamin's voice darkened. She's done nothing to you. She exists, Adana spat. That's enough. Juliet spoke, finally. Her voice was calm. I don't want your place. Adana's laugh was bitter. You already took it. Benjamin turned. You need to leave. But Adana wasn't finished. You think this ends with her carrying your child? You think this breaks your mother's curse? She died with hatred in her eyes. That hatred doesn't dissolve just because you replaced me. She forgave me, Benjamin said. Adana sneered. Did she? A silence filled the room. Then she stepped closer to Juliet, who hadn't moved. You think this child will live? She whispered. Benjamin stepped forward like thunder. Guards, 2 security men entered quickly. They looked to Benjamin. Escort her out. She is not to return. Adana raised her hands in mock surrender. Of course. Throw out your past. Embrace your guilt. But remember this, your mother's grave still weeps. And curses don't end with childbirth. She let herself be let out, but her eyes stayed on Juliet until the very last step. When the doors shut behind her, Juliet turned to Benjamin, her hands shaking. He pulled her into his arms. She won't hurt you, he whispered. I won't let her. But as he held her, his heart thudded with dread. Because he knew Adana. And Adana never lost quietly. Within days, the atmosphere changed. The lights in the hallway flickered during dinner. Juliet woke one night to find all her clothes torn, slashed like someone had taken a blade to them. The next morning, a dead bird lay on the welcome mat, its blood smeared into strange shapes. Security footage caught nothing. The guards reported no intrusions. Benjamin's fear grew. Juliet tried to remain calm, but her face grew paler each day. She slept less, ate less. She prayed more. And when he touched her hand, it felt cold. Doctors said the baby was fine, but Benjamin felt something unraveling. She's trying to frighten us, he said one night, pacing the room. This is her way. Juliet looked up from her Bible. Walls won't save us, Benjamin. You know that. Then what will? She touched her belly gently. Faith. But Benjamin wasn't sure his soul had any left to offer. That night, they packed and left. He moved her to a smaller estate on the edge of Lagos, a private house with tighter security, fewer windows, and a garden surrounded by high walls. You'll be safe here, he told her. But Juliet only nodded, her eyes distant. At night, he heard her whispering. Soft prayers. Sometimes, she cried silently into her pillow. And sometimes, she dreamed. She woke one morning pale and breathless. I saw her, she said. Who? Your mother. By a river. She was wearing her white scarf. She said, "The curse lifts, but darkness will fight to reclaim what love restores." Benjamin held her hand tightly. He didn't sleep that night. One rainy evening, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A whisper. "You thought you could hide her?" Benjamin froze. "You gave me nothing, Benjamin," Adonai's voice said. "You gave me shame. And now you reward someone else with what I begged God for? She will not enjoy what was denied me. No child of yours will." The call ended. Benjamin's heart slammed against his ribs. He dropped the phone and ran to Juliet's room. She was asleep, peaceful, one hand on her stomach. He stood at the doorway, watching her breathe. "I will protect you," he whispered, "even if it costs me everything." Outside, in the shadows of the garden wall, a figure stood watching. Adonai. Rain drenched her hair. Her eyes gleamed like wet knives. And she whispered to the dark, "This ends with me." The days that followed Adonai's phone call were silent, but not peaceful. In the villa outside Lagos, Juliet moved softly, her hand always resting on the curve of her belly. She no longer hummed while sweeping. She no longer sat in the garden. She stayed inside, close to the windows, watching the gates like someone expecting a storm. Benjamin noticed. He tried to distract her with gentle touches, hot soup, new books. But the weight in her eyes never left. Even the staff tiptoed now. Security was tight. Cameras covered every corner. 2 guards were stationed by the gate. But Benjamin knew the danger wasn't always physical. Juliet had told him, over tea one morning, Adonai isn't just angry. She's bitter. That kind of pain doesn't knock. It seeps through walls. Benjamin didn't reply. He just nodded and reached for her hand, squeezing gently. Inside, he was unraveling. He couldn't shake the memory of the phone call, the venom in Adonai's voice, the promise of something final. He couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made him jump. Every shadow across the lawn made him pace. And Juliet's dream haunted him. The curse lifts, but darkness will fight to reclaim what love restores. He didn't believe in dreams, not really. But his mother had warned him too, and everything she'd said had come true. Now, with Juliet carrying what might be his only child, Benjamin couldn't risk hope without fear. Then came the letter. Juliet found it under her pillow. The envelope was plain. Inside, a single sheet. Scrawled in red ink, the handwriting unmistakable. "You will never hold that child. Watch your back. Watch hers." Juliet's hands trembled as she read it. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just walked into Benjamin's study and placed the letter on his desk. When he read it, he went still. Then he stood. And for the first time since the funeral, Benjamin saw his own reflection in the mirror, haunted, hardened, and deadly serious. "I won't wait for her to strike," he said. That evening, he called his lawyer, updated the police, and doubled security again. Juliet was moved to a safer wing. Staff were told not to mention her presence to anyone, not even relatives. But Juliet only watched him, her eyes heavy with something deeper than fear. "This isn't a war you can win with walls, Benjamin." He didn't answer. He simply kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'll keep you safe." But she knew what he didn't. Some wars begin inside the soul. The next day, Juliet fainted. She was folding baby clothes when her knees buckled. A housekeeper screamed. Benjamin rushed her to the hospital himself. He didn't speak during the drive, just gripped the steering wheel like it was his last link to control. Juliet lay in the back seat, her breath shallow. At the hospital, they wheeled her in. Benjamin paced the hallway for an hour, fists clenched, whispering a desperate prayer with every breath. When the doctor returned, Benjamin nearly tackled him. "She's fine," the doctor said with a smile. "And so is the baby." Benjamin blinked. "What happened?" "Exhaustion," the doctor said. "But you should know, she's further along than expected. She could deliver early." Benjamin exhaled shakily, running a hand over his face. Thank God. But as he stepped into Juliet's room, she was already awake, smiling faintly. "Sorry for the scare," she whispered. He sat beside her, his voice low. "You scared me more than I've ever been scared in my life." She placed a hand on his. "Benjamin, I need to go to the village." He frowned. "Now?" "Soon," she said. "To your mother's grave. I need to speak with her." He hesitated. "Why?" Juliet looked out the window. "Because peace is not given, it's made. And I believe her spirit is waiting." 3 days later, they made the journey. The sky was pale and clear, but the road was long. Benjamin drove himself. Juliet sat beside him, a scarf over her head, her eyes closed in silent prayer. The village hadn't changed. The trees still swayed like old men. The air still carried wood smoke and rain. At the churchyard, they stepped out. The grave sat quietly beneath a frangipani tree. Fresh flowers had been left by someone, a villager, perhaps, or something else. Juliet knelt first. She placed a small bundle of cloth on the stone, baby clothes. Then she whispered, "Madam Sarah, your son is here, and so am I. I came because I believe your love hasn't ended, and because I believe your curse wasn't born of hate, but heartbreak." Benjamin stood behind her, unable to move. "I never knew you," Juliet continued, "but I know your story. You gave everything. You were denied a peaceful end, but I believe you watch from beyond." Her voice trembled. "Please, bless this child. Release your son. We're trying." Benjamin fell to his knees beside her, eyes full of tears. "Mama," he said hoarsely, "I failed you. I let my pride poison your love. I listened to the wrong voice. And I paid with silence, with loss. But I'm here now. Please, please forgive me." A soft breeze stirred the branches above them. Juliet smiled, eyes closed. "She hears you." As they rose to leave, Benjamin felt something loosen in his chest, like the first breath after years of drowning. Back in Lagos, things began to shift. Juliet smiled again. Her steps became lighter. The baby kicked stronger. Even the staff noticed how the house felt warmer, calmer, like something sacred had returned. Benjamin still had bad nights, still woke from dreams of marble steps and blood. But Juliet was always there, whispering peace over him, resting his head against her chest. "I believe she's forgiven you," she said one night. "But you need to forgive yourself." Benjamin stared at the ceiling. "How?" Juliet placed his hand on her belly. "You start here. But peace never comes unchallenged. And some spirits don't stay buried." One night, as lightning lit the sky, Benjamin received a package. No return address. Inside, a cracked picture frame. A photo from their wedding. He and Adana. Shattered. Glass missing. And underneath it, a note in familiar handwriting. "You can replace a wife, but not a curse." He burned the letter without speaking. But inside, he knew. Adana was not finished. And neither was fate. The package changed everything. Benjamin stood by the fireplace, watching the photo burn. His wedding picture with Adana, cracked, missing glass, twisted like a relic from a time he no longer claimed. The flames licked the paper clean, but the note beneath it still echoed in his mind. "You can replace a wife, but not a curse." That night, Juliet found him on the balcony, silent, unmoving. Rain misted the air, but he didn't flinch. "She's close," he said quietly. "I can feel her." Juliet didn't ask who. She knew. Adana. They had tried to outpace her. Walls, guards, prayers. But vengeance, like guilt, seeps through cracks in silence. She wasn't finished. Not with them. Not with the child. Juliet placed her hands on his chest. "She has no power here, Benjamin. Not anymore." But Benjamin wasn't sure. Because 2 nights later, Juliet woke screaming. It was just after 2 a.m. Lightning flashed across the room. Juliet clutched her stomach, sweat soaking her skin. "The baby," she gasped. "Something's wrong." Benjamin called the driver. No time. He lifted her himself, carried her to the car, his voice trembling as he barked directions, prayers, anything to keep his mind from fracturing. At the hospital, doctors rushed her into the delivery ward. "It's early," one nurse said. "She's going into labor." Benjamin's world narrowed to one waiting room, one ticking clock. Juliet's cries echoed from the back. Then silence. Then the sound of rushing feet. A doctor appeared. "She's ready. We need you, sir." Benjamin followed. The delivery room felt colder than expected. Juliet lay on the bed, pale but calm. Sweat clung to her forehead. Her eyes searched for Benjamin. And when they locked, something passed between them. Strength. He took her hand. "I'm here," he whispered. "Stay." The pain came in waves. Screams. Breaths. Sweat. Blood. Benjamin watched, helpless but present. And then, a sound. Small. Sharp. Insistent. A newborn cry pierced the air like a trumpet announcing victory. The doctor held up the child. "It's a girl," he said. "Perfectly healthy." Benjamin's knees almost gave out. He reached forward with trembling arms as they placed the tiny bundle in his hands. Her skin was soft. Her cries loud. Her eyes, closed tight, still between worlds. He kissed her forehead. "Sarah," he whispered. "Your name is Sarah?" Juliet let out a soft laugh, tears on her cheeks. She would be proud. And just like that, the mansion that once echoed with curses now echoed with new life. They brought Sarah home wrapped in white. The staff wept. The guards clapped. The maids placed fresh flowers in every room. Juliet moved slowly, but glowed. Benjamin carried Sarah into the nursery and placed her gently in the crib. The walls were painted soft cream, stars on the ceiling. On the windowsill, a framed photo of Madame Sarah stood beside a candle. "Welcome home," Benjamin whispered. But peace, even when earned, must still be guarded. Because 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Typed. Anonymous. But the language was clear. "The child you named Sarah is not yours to keep. Blood remembers. So does betrayal." Benjamin didn't show Juliet. He increased security, moved Juliet and Sarah to the innermost part of the estate. Guards on every corner. But one evening, while Juliet was feeding Sarah, Benjamin received a call. Blocked number. A woman's voice, low and venomous. "She bears my shame. You should thank me. I could have done worse." Then she hung up. Benjamin's hands shook as he stared at the phone. But when he turned to the nursery, Juliet was singing. Sarah was cooing. And the world outside faded. 3 months passed. The threats stopped. Adana disappeared. News came from a distant friend. Adana had moved abroad. Started a new life. Met a man named Jacob. A quiet man. A kind one. One day, a newspaper carried a headline. Former oil heiress Adana Okonkwo gives birth to baby boy at 41. Benjamin read the article in silence. His hands didn't shake. His chest didn't tighten. He simply folded the page and set it aside. Juliet watched him carefully. "Are you all right?" He nodded. "I am." And he meant it. Because he didn't feel anger, or envy, or fear. He felt release. The curse had broken its circle. The past had finally let go. That evening, Benjamin wrote a letter. He signed it with 3 names. Benjamin, Juliet, and Sarah. He sent it with a parcel, baby clothes, toys, books. A gesture. A bridge. To Adana. He didn't expect a reply. But weeks later, one arrived. No note. Just a small photo inside. Adana holding her baby. Tears in her eyes. No words needed. One night, Benjamin sat in the nursery. Sarah slept in his arms, her tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. The room was quiet. The lamp glowed softly. He stared down at her, whispering, "I was blind once. I chased pride. I buried love beneath ambition. And I paid the price." He looked toward the photo of his mother. "I named her Sarah because you deserve to live on. Not just in memory, but in blood, in breath, in the laughter of this child." Juliet stepped in, her robe draped loosely over her shoulder. She watched them, father and daughter, and smiled. "She will know," she said. Benjamin looked up. "She will know everything," Juliet continued. "What you lost, what you learned, what you became." He nodded, voice thick. "She will know you too. The one who saved me." Juliet knelt beside them, placed her head on his shoulder. "She saved us both," she whispered. Outside, the moon rose over Lagos. Inside, lullabies replaced silence. In the garden, flowers bloomed. And somewhere beyond the veil, Madame Sarah smiled. Her curse broken, her son reborn, her name carried forward in love.